Hi, everyone, and welcome to Joy in Dementia. My name is Laura Smothers-Chu, and I am the CEO and founder of Befriended Heart, where I help daughters navigate their parents' dementia. So today I have a really special treat for you guys. I met Vicki last year. I actually reached out to her. I just felt like we had so much in common with the positivity about dementia that we chatted, and I think that she has this really great strength of helping us figure out family dynamics, whether it's with the forgetful parent or the caregiving parent or our siblings. And I really wanted to bring her on for this holiday video. So we're talking, Thanksgiving is coming up soon. We have Christmas next month, or you can have birthday parties, anything that's really bringing all the family members together. And it's especially difficult for us as long distance daughters because there's a lot of things that we see that we didn't know about, right? So there's skills that maybe our forgetful parent now doesn't have, whether it's losing part of their speech or not able to eat with silverware or anything like that, which is completely new to us, and it can be very jarring. And so I wanted to talk with Vicki about her experience and what she can bring to those situations that we're likely going to encounter in a couple months. So Vicky Noland Fitch is a dementia consultant. She's a social worker, and she's a best-selling author at Dementia with Grace. She works out of the state of Alabama, and she's also available for online consulting as well. I reached out to Vicki based on, as I said, her name, but also her book. And I read her book. It's a great book. She talks about the GRACE system. GRACE stands for an acronym, and it's been really helpful. I love how she wrote such down-to-earth language, and I felt like she was speaking right to me. So I highly recommend you check out her book. And the other thing is that Vicki and I are also going to be featured speakers in the online Dementia Caregiver Summit, which is actually happening now. And Vicki has also worked for over 20 years in long-term care, and she developed framework for multiple memory care centers in the Southeast. So Vicki, welcome to Joy in Dementia. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much. And let me say, your name, Joy in Dementia, is one of the things that just, I thought that was such a wonderful moment to have, that you talk about joy, I talk about grace. And I think that absolutely the positive side of dementia caregiving can be highlighted and expanded upon. And I just enjoy you. I enjoy your channel. I thank you so much for having me, because it's an honor.
Oh, thank you. And I'm really excited for our talk today because I've been looking forward to it for quite a few months. Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your expertise, Vicki?
Sure, yeah. I'm a social worker. Knew that I wanted to be involved in the geriatric side of things from the very beginning, from a junior in college. I knew that I wanted to be a social worker, and I knew that I wanted to work in nursing homes, and spent 20 years on the actual front lines in a nursing home. And then the last several years, I have been in consultancy with facilities, primarily nursing homes, some assisted livings. And then in the most recent iteration of my career, I'm helping home caregivers, because I love the idea of aging in place. And when I learned that, as my role as a nursing home social worker, I found that most people with dementia were admitted to my facility because of one of two reasons: because there were behaviors that people couldn't manage, or there was incontinence that they didn't want to manage. Now, I can't do anything about incontinence, can't do a thing about it, but I can do something about behaviors. I have developed the behavior management system. I've developed one before I developed the GRACE system. And now that I've developed the GRACE system, and people, wanted me to write the book and all of that, I said, yeah, I think I can do that. I don't know how to write a book, so I just wrote down everything I knew and put chapter titles on it. And it's been a whirlwind. It's a bestseller in 3 different categories on Amazon.
Congratulations. That's great. I know that's hard to get there, so that's excellent. Well, that's excellent.
Well, I had no idea. I had no idea what a big deal it was until somebody else told me, hey, that's a huge deal. And I was like, oh, okay. I believe in common sense caregiving. I think a lot of times caregivers get overwhelmed with the diagnosis of dementia, and they let that intimidate them and scare them and cause them to believe that it is something outside of their ability. And
Yeah.
it's not. We are people taking care of people. We are dealing with people's egos and their desires and their Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're dealing with all of those unmet needs. That is something we all can do, especially as women. And I know that your audience is a lot of daughters, and we don't want to disinclude the sons, but it does fall to women primarily, and women are caregivers naturally. And so it's not anything that you can't do just because there's a diagnosis of dementia hanging there. That's my goal.
Absolutely. I think we have that in common, that we really want to empower caregivers, because there is so much we can do.
Yes.
It's really important that people are educated in that, because I feel like I felt so much more empowered when I was educated, and I no longer felt like a victim of this disease.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a very hard journey. It's a very emotionally hard journey, and there are lots of unknowns even to people with advanced degrees. There's a lot of unknowns in dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that kind of gives me hope that it's not outside of my understanding. I just have to just center myself back to say, I'm a person taking care of a person. I know how to love. I know how to give care. Well, what is that but a caregiver?
Yes, exactly. And I think, Vicki, you have a credential as certified dementia practitioner.
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And Vicki, do you have personal experience with dementia?
Well, I don't in my family. I have a lot of other morbidities in my family that I have dealt with, but inside my nursing home, I was just the general social worker, but I saw it across the board. Then in my facility, they decided to open a dementia unit. And so my administrator knew my love for folks with dementia. So she said, would you like to research it and develop the unit? And I said, yes. And so there were not that many units that I could go and look at to pattern mine after. So I really had to dig in the literature, look at the European literature, what they were doing right over there. So I developed, the physical plant, with no mirrors, no holes in the, no different spots of linoleum where it looked like a hole in the floor.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, I had to really, really fight against some of that stuff because that was just the way you did it.
Yeah.
Everybody had an intercom. We have to have an intercom overhead. How will the nurses hear the pages? And I said, yes, but you have people in this facility that are already hearing voices, and we're going to pipe in some voices in the hallway.
Yeah.
That's not a good idea.
No.
So it's just all developed, and it was my honor to learn how to better take care of people and put it into practice. And
I think you mentioned too that you have a personal health condition that would kind of help you identify a little bit more with forgetful people.
Absolutely. I have temporal lobe epilepsy. I have had that diagnosis for now 12 years. I have seizures weekly. I have not, in the last 12 years, I've not gone more than 17 days without a seizure. I have seizures all the time. It's my normal now. In fact, that's why I had to go into private practice, because I could no longer work a traditional job. And so, my seizure focus is in my hippocampus. And for those of you that don't know about the sections of the brain, the hippocampus is, you can kind of think of it as a clearinghouse for your memories. When you have memories that are, short term, your hippocampus decides where to store those memories long term. So I have, because I have had so many cerebral insults from all of the seizures that I've had, I have a lot of loss of memory. There's things about my childhood that I don't remember, So it has informed my practice so much, because especially in the beginning, when you're starting to lose your words and you're starting to lose who people are, you can't put a name to a face. You process faces and names in two different places in your brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a common loss. I have that loss. In that way, it has taught me so much about the experience of someone with dementia. And it helps me see that the soul of the person is still there. My soul is intact. I can't tell you if I went to school with you in the 80s, but I can remember, the situation around school and all that kind of stuff. So it's very interesting to me the way that I believe God allows those things. And it's very interesting to me how He gifted me with this disease. I absolutely see it as a gift because it has informed my practice so much.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Vicki. It's really those personal stories that help us understand too and really feel that universal love. And I totally agree. I keep saying this on my channel that the person that is forgetful, that has dementia, is still in there, and we
Absolutely.
love them just as much, and I think, you said that perfectly well too. So you talked a little bit about this, Vicki, but like, how did this experience help shape your career as far as understanding like the bedside experience in healthcare, for example?
Well, I'm not just a caregiver, I'm a care receiver. And so that adds a whole different texture to my practice. And, I think that when I started having my seizures, I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't, I had no idea what was going on. But it made such a huge impact in my life over the next, the first year that I was diagnosed, and I had to medically retire and get disability and all that. And it was so disheartening to me. I had lots of losses. I lost my independence. I still cannot bathe alone. I don't have to have somebody bathe me, but I cannot be in a tub of water in my house unless somebody else is in this house.
Mm.
I cannot use the stove unless somebody else is in this house. My doctor said when I first started with when I was first diagnosed with the seizure disorder, he said, you can't operate heavy machinery. And, he meant that as a car. I saw that as a stove. And I said, the stove is very heavy. I can't pick up the stove. And so I just don't think I need to be cooking anymore. Somebody needs to wait on me and cook my meals. And so, I have always had a belly full of joy, and I can see the humorous side of things, and I find the joy. Like, that's why we connected on the joy.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps me to talk to somebody when I'm sitting at a bedside and I'm talking to somebody early stages, maybe, or just maybe 4, and they realize what their losses are, and it's just devastating to them. I can say, I can't drive anymore. I know that your doctors want to take away your driver's license. And let me tell you, it is awful, but it's not insurmountable.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to define a new normal. And, that is what has helped me. But instead of me saying it as a platitude from somebody who has learned it in a book, I can say, I can't drive. I can't go out and get in my car and just go where I want to. I have to wait for somebody to take me grocery shopping. That is a direct parallel to somebody in stage 4 with dementia.
Yes.
And so the intricacies, the intimacies, those feelings are real to me. And so when I speak to somebody, I think that they understand my authenticity. And it just helps them to say, okay, all right, she's not just talking from a book, she's talking from experience. And if she can overcome it, then maybe I can overcome it.
Yes. And I absolutely love that, because that's, my having the personal experience as being a long distance caregiving daughter. I think that's super valuable. So I'm going to switch views here, and then
I'm going to get some.
So let's get into the recommendations, because you and I know through many of your clients that you work with that Thanksgiving and Christmas are just very stressful times, because, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's some skills that are lost that long distance daughters don't know about ahead of time. There are maybe new kind of embarrassing behaviors that are happening as well, and then you have everyone else's feelings about these new behaviors, that they're just all together in a room, and you're just trying to like sort through all this.
Right.
What would you recommend for daughters to do maybe before the event and during the event?
I talk about, in fact, this is what I'm talking about on the summit. Is the an acronym CALM. I love an acronyms. That's Grace, pick 'em. If you're familiar with my book, or if you read my book, you'll see that I never pass up a good mnemonic device. And CALM stands for choose your perspective, allow your feelings, listen to understand, and manage expectations. The first two of those, the choose your perspective and allow your feelings, are things that you can pregame, so to speak, that you can start dealing with before the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
You already know that holidays are stressful. It's all family coming together of disparate opinions, disparate political views, people who are gluten free and people who think that's ridiculous. So there's already the tension of adults who have different points of view. That exists at every dinner table, at every holiday event, anything that you're going to celebrate. That already exists. Layer on top of that somebody with dementia, who everybody has a different opinion about, who everybody has a different experience with, who everybody has different memories of, and it just adds so much tension. So much tension. There's the natural tension that's already there. Having a person at the table with dementia just expands it.
Totally.
So I believe in trying to become the calmest person in the room. You're already in the room with lots of, personalities. So before you ever get there, you can think about, who's going to be there? What is their perspective? Do I need to engage or ignore that kind of thing? There's lots of things that you can do. You already know that, you need to ignore so-and-so's perspective because, they think daddy should have a colon cleanse and that will, cure his dementia, right? So you already know, okay, that person I'm not talking to. I mean, you can already make those kinds of decisions months before you get there, or days before you get there if you're just now figuring it out.
Like
so
now would be a good time, right? Right. That's why we're timing it well before Thanksgiving.
Say, I'm going to be the calmest person in the room. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be whatever things that are aspirational to you. Now, it may not happen like that once you get in the room. We'll talk about that in a little bit with listening to understand. But, you need to go into it armored with your perspective and your attitude and what you are going to do to engage in the moment and support your person, your forgetful person, and your caregiving person. How's the way that you put it? Your forgetful parent and your
caregiving parent.
Caregiving parent. Okay, I was close. I think that's lovely. I think that's a lovely way to describe the two different perspectives of the people that you are serving. I believe that we serve each other in life, and we certainly serve the person with dementia and the person taking care of the person with dementia. So I think your perspective, you should get rid of all of that I know best kind of thing, and go in there with an open mind to say, I'm going to act this way. I'm going to try to perceive things this way. I'm going to try to be the calmest person in the room. And we'll talk about listen to understand. Allow your feelings. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Laura.
Sorry. I just want to add too, I think it's really important when we are being open-minded to all of these family members and we have an idea of what they're going to say, but everyone is doing the best they can in this situation. I think that's important to remember. And the fact that we'll always be a family, even after this caregiving temporary time is over.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have, for whatever reason in this country, we have started to think that disagreement, cannot be overcome, and it absolutely can. And it absolutely has to be. Yeah. We have to take ourselves out of it and see, how are we best serving our person with dementia? This may be the last Thanksgiving with that person with dementia. And you and your family, your brothers, sisters, whomever, are going to be the survivors of dementia. The person with dementia is not. But there are always survivors, and that's us. And so if during this time, if Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter or a birthday party or whatever causes you to have so much discontent with your family that it cannot be overcome when the person with dementia is no longer with us, that's a waste. It's a complete waste. It's a waste of the person with dementia's legacy. They don't want that. If they could speak to the family, they would say, why can't we all get along? So that's the perspective I think we need to have. We are going to survive this. We will not always be caregivers. But we will always be sisters. We will always be brothers. We will always be family.
Yes. And I think that's another way of like not being victimized by dementia, right? Like dementia has changed our lives in so many ways. Why let that change the love in your family, right?
Right. I mean, you don't have to like people to love them. I mean, it's very simple concept. I believe in very simple concepts. I'm very much about common sense caregiving. And there are things that you can disagree on, and and then go have coffee on the porch. I mean, it's okay. It's not. Dementia itself is a catastrophic bomb in our family. It just hits our family and just goes off, and it affects everybody. Everybody gets hit by the shrapnel.
Totally.
Why make that more difficult by deciding that I am going to be right and I am the sole one that understands this? And I see a lot of that rigidity. People that come and talk with me and say, I don't understand why my family won't do things my way. That kind of thing. And so I gently and lovingly explain, that everybody has a different point of view and that everybody is doing the best that they know how.
Yeah.
The person, and listen, this is true. This came to me, that wanted Daddy to have the colonoscopy and the colon cleanse, and they thought that would cure his dementia. That was a point of view in a real family that I have talked with, and everybody else was like, there was, we have to honor that perspective, even if we don't agree with it. I would say, why do you think that is the right course of action? What have you read? What would you like to share? Acknowledge their feelings, validate their feelings, and then take it under advisement. Just because it's said does not mean it has to be followed. But by allowing them to explain their position, they are caregiving.
Yeah.
It's not the caregiving that you're going to follow through with. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, totally. And so yeah, the first step that Vicki is talking about for calm is choose perspective. Mm-hmm. And what's the second step, Vicki?
Allow feelings. And this is something that you can go ahead and deal with before you get there to the event. Surely if you're on YouTube and you're looking for us and you're investigating, how to have a smooth holiday gathering, then you're the kind of person who has already, kind of thought this through and has probably already talked to your caregiving parent and are on top of things, right? But there are still things that surprise you. But I think that if you allow your feelings to come and you're feeling anxious about going, you're feeling overwhelmed about having to spend a holiday with a person who, in your mind that person has already left. That's a lot. That's heady. I believe in allowing your feelings to visit. Absolutely. And unpacking them and figuring them out and what they're supposed to say to you. Why do I feel guilty? Why do I feel put upon? Why do I feel disappointed? All of those things. Let feelings come. Explore feelings, but don't let feelings unpack to live there. I say visitors are feelings, not roommates. So you can be nice to them. You can say, hello, feeling. Hello, anger. Hello, disappointment. What are you here to teach me? Mm-hmm. And then send it on its way.
Yes. It's really important to try to process those feelings and not try to process them with your family members.
Right. And of course, there will be times, when you're sitting at the table, and, we talked about this a little bit ago about, like, let's say you get there and you've pre-gamed and you've chosen your perspective and you're decided you're going to be the calmest person in the room. And you have already, dealt with the feeling of disappointment that your father, had the last few times you've talked to him on the telephone, his cognition has been diminished, So you're dealing with those feelings of whatever that brings up for you. Then you get there and you're sitting at the table about to have Thanksgiving. Everybody offers grace. And then, you look at the head of the table and your father is eating with his hands. Wow. Nobody told me that Daddy no longer uses silverware. It's nobody's fault that you weren't told. You
Right.
know, your mother or your whomever is keeping all these balls in the air, and she can't think of, oh, and by the way, he sometimes uses his fork and he sometimes uses his fingers. Yeah. So that's a feeling that you're going to have of, whew, shock, maybe disappointment, maybe, disapproval. How dare you let daddy use his hands?
Hmm.
How dare you? I mean, no, let's teach him, let's remind him about a fork. Let's put the fork in his hand. Let's do all of these things. So, I mean, you're dealing with all of that while you are also sitting at the table. And
Right.
that's normal. And that is, again, allowing your feelings to come. But then I would say to my feeling of disappointment or disapproval, I'm going to deal with you later. Right now, I'm having Thanksgiving dinner with my father.
Yeah.
This could be, if he's already eating with his hands, this could absolutely be his last Thanksgiving. And I think that is the perspective that you need to have. What can I do in the moment to honor the person I'm with? Not the person I wish I was with, not the person I should be with, not any of those that you want to fill in the blank. How can I be with the person at this table?
Hmm.
Same thing with the families. I mean, not only are you dealing with your person with dementia, how can I sit here and be with my brother who, we don't agree on how to handle daddy's finances, or with my sister who's already wanting to put him in a facility and I want him to age in place. The Thanksgiving table is not the time to process all of that. That's the time to be thankful for the love that you have together, the table of people that this patriarch has raised, you know, all of that. Be mindful of all of that. You can deal with the feelings later.
Yes. Yes. Or a matriarch, right? Because, it could be, we keep talking about our
I
dad.
know,
My
right,
dad has
right,
dementia, but yeah, I mean, it could be either parent. And it's true because the caregiving parent is also trying to come to terms with these changes too. And I think for my mom, you mentioned that sometimes the caregiving parent might forget to tell the long distance daughter something, or in my case, I think my mom got used to those new things. It was sort of like a survival mechanism, so
right,
I couldn't be mad at her for not telling me.
right,
What I'm looking back now and said, well, that's not really fair for me to feel that way.
right. Well, it's just, my mother did not have dementia, but she had cardiac and pulmonary issues. She was in ICU for 9 months, and my twin brother, was in Memphis, so he was away from us,
Hmm.
and he was a long distance caregiver, and so he would call, and in I see it now. We were 27 years old at the time. It's been 20 something years ago now, 22 years. But he would call with his suggestions, and I would get offended, and I would be like, but you have not been here. You have not heard all the conversations I've heard. You're not, talking to the doctor about her lab work, all of those kind of intricacies that I knew that he didn't know. So
Hmm.
he couldn't make a better decision than he was making. He
Right.
wasn't read in on what I had heard from my own. So there was a lot of forgiveness and understanding that had to happen after my mother died. That's my perspective that I have, on, you know, he will always be my brother. We were not, we were, deep caregivers for my mother for 9 months. And then she passed away. And then we had to deal with, the fallout. And
Yeah.
we had some negative feelings and all that kind of thing. We had to work through all that, and we did. But if I had known then what I know now, I could have received his advice in such a more graceful way. You know,
Yeah.
it's just important that we honor the person that we're taking care of, that we recognize that we are all at that table because of the person.
Yeah.
Either they're our grandparent, our parent, our uncle, our aunt, they are someone significant in the legacy of our family.
Hmm.
Everybody at that table is there because of that person in one way or the other.
Yes.
And, so that, to me, that's what you need. It needs to be a broader perspective, a deeper perspective than just what's happening at the table at the moment.
Yes. So we have choose perspective, allow feelings, and then we've talked about kind of during the event. So what does the L stand for, Vicky?
It's listen to understand. It's listen to understand, but it's not always just listening with your ears. It's also being perceptive of what's going on. I mean, let's just continue that analogy with the person at the head of the table eating with their hands. And you might feel a disappointment, and you might feel that, oh, let's at least show him a fork. Let's see if he remembers what to do with a fork. All of that. But you need to watch what's going on, and perceive what's going on. It's probably not the first time he's used his hands. Is he, it's not just listening with your ears, it's perceiving. And is this the best way for him to eat? What is most important, his ego integrity or his nutrition? Both are important. What are we going to prioritize? And the fact that he is being able to be independent and at least being able to eat with his hands and not have someone sit there and feed him, which is also an ego assault. It's so deep. It's so deep. And we have to, by doing the work, by choosing the perspective and choosing to be the calmest person in the room, you can see what's going on. You can perceive what's going on. You can listen to the input from other people. And then with understanding, I'm the calmest person in the room. I understand what's going on. I'm going to deal with my feelings. I'm compartmentalizing my feelings, but I'm trying to perceive what is going on and what is best for my person.
Yes. And I love this example, Vicki, because while my dad can still use silverware, he does need a little bit of help being fed sometimes, like when he was in rehab after his fall. But I remember distinctly being at an Italian restaurant with my husband, my parents, and one of their friends. And my dad has always loved like condiments, so any type of sauce, for anything, he would just drink it. So he actually took one of those little containers and ramekin, I think, and then just started drinking it like
oh my goodness.
people. And my husband looks at me like, and it was just like you talked about. There was sort of a flood of feelings for me where I was like almost disgusted and like just confused and frustrated and super embarrassed, especially because it was in a public space. So I was embarrassed for us, like people watching us. But I think the biggest thing was that I was most embarrassed for him because I kept picturing the dad that I knew, that he would have never done this before, and he wouldn't have, he would have been embarrassed himself, right? And so I was not being in the moment at that point and thinking about, oh, well, my dad in the past would, first of all, never have done that. And he would have been like horrified that he would have seen himself doing this in the future. But now what I do when my dad does that type of behavior, and I just keep rethinking it, I would have taken my ramekin and done the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because what am I losing by doing that? And really, it was his way. I could have had an emotional connection by doing that same behavior that was lost, because instead I was thinking about myself and how is this embarrassing me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Well, because that's human nature. I mean, the reason we eat with our silverware, we drink from a glass, we don't pick up the bowl and finish the sauce, we teach all of those things because that's what society expects of a organized, managed, mature society, right?
Yeah.
But if you get down to the bottom of it, what was that about? He thought that was delicious. He wanted more of it at the most expedient way, and that was it. I mean, so we're dealing with our basic human nature and our shame and our all of that, but it's not about us.
Right.
It's about them. And when you can have choose the perspective of, I want this to be all about him, then, and I know that comes in where he would be embarrassed if he saw himself doing that. Would you be embarrassed if you saw a 3-year-old doing that? No, because that would be cute. That would be, oh, how funny. He can't wait for that sauce to be put on he wants to go straight to the sauce and skip the pasta. How cute is that? That kind of thing. So, yes, it's not cute when an 80-year-old man does it, but I think that you need to have the perspective of it's harmless. It's harmless.
Yeah.
In the big scheme of things, it's harmless. I just had somebody on my group. I have a group on Facebook, Dementia with Grace Caregiver Support Group. and they talked about that they had picked their mother up from assisted living to go to a baby shower, I think, or something. And she was dressed in mismatched clothes, and she didn't have her hair finished, but she was always so proper. She would have never left the house without lipstick, that kind of thing. But she told her daughter she was ready to go. And the daughter said, well, mother, let's, maybe change this outfit and let's brush through your hair. And she said, no, I'm ready to go. So the daughter was in a conundrum. Do I take my mother looking disheveled and not her best, which is the way that she always presented herself to the world, or do we miss the baby shower? Do I argue with her? Do I push the point? I mean, there was a lot that happened standing in the doorway of that assisted living apartment. And what she decided to do was just to go on, and because she did try to push it, she got pushed back from her mother. So they decided to go on to the baby shower, and it was fine. Everybody at the baby shower knew that she has dementia. They loved that she was there in whatever iteration that was.
Wow.
She was present with the family, which was at the end of the day, the most important thing.
How brave of that daughter. That I can just like feel her fear and judgment and her frustration and her just like that conflict, right? Like I can feel that in my heart because I can identify with that. And it's so wonderful that the group that she was with was like so understanding because they already knew that she had dementia.
Right. And they were just happy to have her there.
Yeah.
Not her clothes, not her haircut, her. And I think, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's fair. It's not fair for you to have to stand in the doorway of your mother's apartment and make those kind of decisions. That is not fair. But that is real life. And, I think by doing the choose your perspective and allow your feelings, all of that I'm saying to pregame, that is something you need to practice every day in your life. Choosing joy. Be the calmest person in traffic. Be the calmest person on Facebook. Facebook is a wonderful place to practice your Thanksgiving manners, because there are all kinds of people on Facebook who are saying things you don't agree with, who you really, really, really want to tell them how the world really works.
Yep. Totally.
But what does that prove? Nothing. You are not going to bring them over to your side of thinking. I mean, that kind of thing. You are not going to do that at the Thanksgiving table. So, you have to, Facebook is a perfect place to practice being the calmest person on Facebook and just scrolling by. It doesn't have to affect your life. It doesn't have to change your mind. It doesn't have to do anything. You just have to exist in a society where there are disagreements.
Yeah.
And once you learn how to do that in traffic, on Facebook, at your work, in a conference, once you learn how to do that, you can apply it to every other part of your life.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk about the last step. I'm excited to hear about this one.
Okay,
It's with them, I think, and it's during the event.
Yes, manage expectations. This is, again, something that you can do before you get there, but it really, really, the rubber hits the road when you're in the moment. Just like this woman about these clothes, her expectation was going to be she was going to get there, pick her mother up, maybe have to help with, a few things. And she said normally that's when she picks her up. She normally has to help, tidy things up, cinch things up, and then they're ready to go. Mm-hmm. And she was blown out of the water. Her expectation of that my mother will be sitting here like I know her, fully dressed and ready to go, was shattered in that moment. So her expectation was out the window. So you have to manage your expectations and know before you go in there that things could be different, especially if you're a long distance daughter and you've not had the opportunity to be at a table with your parents maybe in the last 6 months or the last, whatever. Mm-hmm. And the last time you had flown into home, things looked one way and now they're going to look different. And you can go ahead and know that maybe there's some changes in the gait, there's some changes in the speech, there's some changes in whatever. But knowing it and seeing it are two different things.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes, totally. I remember that was the most heart-wrenching thing, was like this new, I was, really sad and grieving the fact that my dad could no longer pick out words or like finish his sentences, right? And then I came back the next time and something else was lost. And I was just kind of, I realized that I had spent so much focusing on what was lost more than what he could still do,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And so I think that this is really great advice. Not only do you shield yourself to really, choose the perspective and, but you also try to just go with the flow of what happens, right? With a progressive disease like dementia, you really don't know what one day is going to look like to the next. So like the daughter that was on your caregiving support group, Vicky, she really thought, okay, well, in the past, this is what happened, right? It could have been the day before, but the dementia is so unexpected that it's really good to, know to go with the flow. And for me, realizing that my presence was most important. It wasn't what activities we got done that I had planned to do that didn't get done. It's not even the conversation necessarily. It's really just like your presence with the forgetful person and the caregiving parent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because, think in that situation, a baby shower, years down the road, when everybody is reflecting back on grandmother, you will know that she was a part of that daughter's, birth, or, the celebration of her expected birth, and whatever a shower means, it still means that for the person with dementia, and they can still be a part of the story, and it's about their soul. It's not about what they're wearing or how their hair looks or anything. So that's the managed expectations, because we are up against societal expectations. We're up against our own expectations of how things should be. We just have to learn to go with the flow and say, my person has dementia. I have no idea what that is going to look like today. But I know who my person is. I know who my father is. I know who my mother is. I know who they are as a person. And, I know that, maybe she would not present herself this way if she had a full intact brain. But at the end of the day, what's most important? Her spending time with the family or her outfit?
Absolutely.
And just be
Absolutely.
clear on that, and that's part of managing expectations.
Yes. Yes. So, Vicky, what if long distance caregivers, we are we have our own jobs, we have our own families. I hear from daughters, I just feel like I don't have enough time to devote to this, like pre-gaming and, during the event. I don't even know if I can visit for the holidays this year.
Yeah. I challenge people when they say they don't have enough time. I challenge people to go a little bit deeper and think, what does that really mean? Do I really not have enough time? And I would think about that and think about, what prioritize what's going on. This very well, could be the last Thanksgiving, the last Christmas. It could. We get moments with dementia. We don't get years.
Yeah.
We don't get years and years and years. We get months and moments. I call it moments and months, where, we can be there and we can face whatever's going on. People make time for what's important. They do. Even if, you have, 10 children and, 2 jobs and, whatever, you do carve out time for what's important. We're not talking about a 6-month engagement. We're talking about Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas Eve, those kind of things. I think it's important to carve out time with your person with dementia because it could very well be the last time. It could. And that's just the truth of it. And it's hard to face. But sometimes I don't have time because I can't handle seeing her like that.
Yeah.
She doesn't know who I am anyway.
Yeah.
It's just going to be so hard for me to be in the same room with these people I don't agree with. Usually I don't have time as a Band-Aid for something deeper.
Or what I hear too, Vicky, is like, I want to remember them the way they were.
Absolutely. Well, yes. And that's absolutely true. And I know that, I have a lot of people that say, I just don't want to see her like that. I don't want that to be my last memory of her. This is what I advise. Just like I talked about before, that, you will be a survivor of dementia. They will not. And you have to think about your life, your lifespan. And, you will continue to live your life, and you have to decide, can I live with myself if I said I didn't have time to go to Christmas dinner, and then spring comes and he passes away, and I didn't spend that last Christmas? Those are the things that you will think about 20 years from now. When I think about, my mother's been gone 22 years now, my daddy has been gone 20. When I think back, I regret things that I didn't do, or the things that I didn't say, more than what I did. Even if we had disagreements, which we did, even if we had a strained relationship, which we sometimes did, I don't regret that. I don't regret the things that happened. I regret the things that didn't happen. And you cannot go back and knit that together. Right. You cannot. If you go to the holiday and you have a falling out, and you whatever, just like me and my brother did about healthcare decisions, we have, in the intervening 22 years, made peace about that. But if it had not, if I had not seen her, if I had not put in the time, and all of those kind of things, I would regret all of that, because I don't have a second chance. I had a second chance with my brother. I've had 3 or 4 or 5, 15 chances. I have not had another chance with her. So I think you have to put it in perspective, back to choosing your perspective. This is all, it's all intermingled. It's a way, to me, it's a way of thinking about your situation. It's not, okay, let me get a notebook and write down that I'm going to be the calmest person in the room, and this is going to be my perspective. It is just something you think about on your drive to work. Yeah. It's something you think about when you're laying in bed at night and you're trying to go to sleep. And instead of thinking, about something frivolous, think about these things. It's easy to it's easy to, to make it a part of your life, if you've decided that that's what you want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think definitely the practice is like huge. and honestly, like, who wouldn't want to be calm during traffic, right?
Right.
So it's things that we always wanted to do, but we didn't know how. And now Vicki is giving us the tools of how to do it. And Vicki, I know we had a wonderful conversation. I think this is going to be so helpful. And so if you could say the one most important thing to take away from this interview, what would you offer long distance caregiving daughters?
I think the concept of feelings are visitors; they're not roommates. Because I call it mud puddle thinking. And, you just get marred down. You just sit in the mud puddle and you think about, oh, poor me. I am so disappointed. I am so shamed. I am so guilty. I am so impatient. I am so whatever. And you wear it like a garment. Mm-hmm. And that is so defeating. It's so self-defeating. You can learn from your feelings, but then you have to move on and put into practice what you learn.
Totally.
You cannot allow feelings to unpack and move in. You just can't. You will not grow, and you will not. To me, you waste the journey if you don't grow through the journey. Yes. This is happening to you. This is happening. This is real life. You are dealing with dementia. It is happening. So don't waste it. Don't waste the classroom. Of teaching you about yourself, teaching you about your family, teaching you about conflict resolution. I mean, there's so much to learn. And to me, that's the only way to salvage the tragedy that is dementia, is to figure out what you are learning from it, what this is teaching you, and then how can you apply it to other areas of your life and your life going forward after you're no longer a caregiver.
I love that. Yes, because dementia is not the end of the story.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Vicki. I know you have a book out, so you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
I do, yes, and it's called Dementia with Grace, a new positive way of dealing with behaviors with people with dementia. So it has a component, the whole component really is behavior management. Like I said earlier, the 2 reasons why people are admitted into a facility and not managed at home is behaviors they cannot deal with and incontinence they don't want to deal with. We can help you manage behaviors, and so that you in a common sense way, it is a get in and get out book. This book can be read in one setting.
Yeah.
And it's applicable, it's actionable right now. You can take what I teach you in the book and apply it to your situation today. So it's available on Amazon. It was a bestseller in 3 different categories. I had no idea that caregivers needed this book, but they had told me, but I didn't know. Anyway, and so I would love for you to copy of it. The other way to access my teaching is through YouTube. I have like 120 something videos. Everywhere on social media is Dementia with Grace, and it's the same on YouTube. You just go to the top and type in Dementia with Grace, and I pop up in several different iterations of this haircut. So wherever you find me, I'm talking the same. I just have a different haircut. So give me some grace and love.
But she's pretty much always wearing pearls, and she always has red lips.
Yes, yes, yeah, and red nails. Yes. Yes.
Perfect. Well, I will actually put the links below to Vicky's Amazon book and to your YouTube channel, Vicki. And thank you so much for joining me today. I think this has been really, really great.
Thank you for having me. I just love helping caregivers. I love what I do, and I love helping people take care of the people that they love.
And thank you all for tuning in. We will see you in a couple weeks when I do my live video, and then I'll be doing another great interview. So I hope you subscribe below, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.